Has Apple lost their mind? Now, welcome to this video. This is gonna be more of a talk, me and you. We're doing something a little bit different here. So if you don't like these podcasty style talking head, you to me type videos, you can go check out my other content. But this has been on my mind for a while. You know, the stock price is plummeting, them being $1 trillion company, and people have asked and people are just talking mad crap, and that's what people do when a major company or a major successful person or thing starts to decline. It's easy for people to talk crap about it. But today I want to discuss my opinion as to whether I think they have lost their mind as a company and in many different areas and aspects. So let's begin by talking about, has Apple lost their price mind? So the first thing I want to talk about, has Apple lost their price mind? So if you think about just a few years back, the iPhone 7 was like $650. The iPhone XS today, which would be the equivalent premier phone today, is $1,000 to start. So you've seen a massive price inflation over the past few years. One thing you have to understand about Apple, the smartphone, and the company themselves, they don't make cheap products. They've always been trying to make the best of the best. If we compare this to the automotive industry, a Tesla's more than a Mustang, for example. I'm not talking the Shelby Cobra, the 60,000 special edition for 300 cars built. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that a company like Tesla, for example, is trying to build the most innovative technology-based cars, some of them out there. So you're gonna pay more of a premium for that than, say, you know, your standard fast sports car Mustang, for example. So same thing with the phones. You know, Apple's trying to be the most, you know, premium brand, but the thing that has got people tricked up is that the phones themselves aren't really innovating that much more than the ones that are cheaper. And that's where US consumers have really been holding on to their phones. They've been feeling like they're not doing enough. And these are the customers that would actually pay $1,000 plus in the US if they do stuff that really makes you want to get it. Now, where I feel like they're not really being smart is by not releasing a phone kind of like what they did with the SE for the India market. Now, India is like the second largest population in the world with a massive amount of people who still don't even have a smartphone. And Apple is not even putting out a phone that would be widely accessible there. So I feel like that is a bad move. And I feel like we should see a phone that is around that $399 price point here in the US, which would put it at least around the price of like a OnePlus over there, which will put it around the price of somewhere like a OnePlus. That would really definitely make it much more accessible in the India market. So that's one area where I think Apple can improve as well. Another thing you must keep in mind is that the iPhone is basically Apple's business right there. So like if, you know, the iPhone goes away, then basically right now the company is nowhere near at the top of the game. Like instead of you seeing massive innovation, you might just see stabilization like you do with the PC market, where it's just pretty stable. You don't see many new things coming out of laptops, but you still see faster laptops, better laptops. And it's kind of boring, to be honest, but at least it's stable and it's something that was needed for humanity, and now it's there. So that might be the way we're going with the iPhones. Yes, they're going to get a little bit better every year. Yes, there might be a foldable iPhone someday, but the core functionality of what it does is probably here to stay until we have some other gadget that just overtakes smartphones, which I don't think we're anywhere near that right now. So to answer the original question, has Apple lost their price mind? And I don't think they have. I just think that they have not done enough for the price. They've lost their value mind. So they're not giving enough value for the price point, because that's what business is all about, solving problems and giving value. In exchange for you solving my problem, giving me something that is going to enhance my life, that's value for me. So I'll pay you for that. But the new iPhones are not giving us enough value versus our old iPhones. So that's where we have the problem. So the newer iPhones being higher priced but not offering much more. Have they lost their investor mind? Well, that comes down to if you're investing in Apple, but I think that, you know, it's all about the customers buying more and buying more. So they got to fix other things in order to please investors. So kind of, they've definitely lost their mind when it comes to India. I feel like they're not putting enough effort into this massively growing market, where companies like OnePlus, Xiaomi, for example, the Realme brand, the Redmi brand with the Note 7 that just came out, just really doing really well. So that brings me on to the next point. have they lost their US mind? Now, I'm talking about the United States here, because the United States is a very different place. And when it comes to Apple sales, they sell a lot of product here. And that's because most people here are willing to pay that price, but they have to innovate more if they want to sell at the premium segment here in the US. So we need better tech in our iPhones that are going to make us feel like this is worth it here in the US. That kind of goes globally as for the entire company, but here in the US, we really need to see some major changes that are really going to be making it worth it. For example, let's take advantage of these larger screens you're bringing here. For example, let's bring some new tech in the display that we haven't seen on any other smartphone that makes it worthy over these other products. For example, let's prove the cameras to the point where they can actually replace our cameras. Like, yes, they're getting close, but they're still not there. Let's get them to that point where they can literally, that's all you need is just that camera. That can be huge as well. And let's get them to be a little more productive, such as like what the Note 9 does, for example. Let's get a little bit more productivity. There's a way you can get more productivity while keeping it simple. It can be done. And let's also offer a cheaper, modern, basic iPhone that's not $749 like a XR, but like $499 or $549 for those people that don't want to go into a premium device. Okay, so we talked about the US market, the India market, the investors, the price. But has Apple lost their camera mind? Because we keep seeing these rumors of a triple 48 megapixel, whatever, 50,000 megapixel camera. Maybe they need to stop focusing just on the camera alone. I did mention that that's one feature you could bring for the premium segment, which I think will be fine. Let's not make that the only thing that we improve is just the camera. Let's focus on improving the software even more, bringing more useful features to the iOS platform. So it's not just the camera we need to focus on. And if Apple thinks that just improving the camera every year is going to be the only thing you need to do to really bring back, to really get that growth back up, that's not going to do it, because most people are pretty suffice with the cameras they already have right now on their iPhone. Okay, so you see that Mac behind me. You know I'm not against Apple as a whole. I do buy Apple products. I'm definitely in the ecosystem. I'm also in the Android ecosystem. I'm also in the Google ecosystem. I'm in all the ecosystems, even the Microsoft ecosystem. I even was in the BlackBerry ecosystem, but I'm starting to move away from the BlackBerry ecosystem. But I do want to defend Apple in a couple of areas. In their defense, the tech has become, but I do want to defend Apple in a couple areas, because I think people just look at one thing and they don't give credit where credit's due. And where credit is due is the tech has become substantially better. The iPhone XS, for example, is a marvel of technology. Yes, it does, we can go back all day to the price, but the camera on here is literally amazing. It's almost as good as this Sony RX100 point and shoot you're seeing right here. Now, if that RX100 point and shoot that's recording this video did not have a slightly larger sensor, this probably would be beating it. And in some areas, it's still more useful than a camera that you're seeing this video recorded on. So overall, that is pretty impressive. In addition to that, the Face ID tech is very innovative. There's not a lot of other companies besides Huawei that have this type of tech, and they had it after Apple. Apple first had this, where it uses all these sensors to scan your face. This is super secure in comparison to some other phones. Also, the A12 Bionic is just blowing away the competition in processing performance, making these phones last substantially longer. So while the prices have increased, the tech has gotten substantially better, but that doesn't make it more useful, because I don't think many consumers are, unless you're a pro user, are really taking advantage of this. This is a consumer product, not just a pro product. And they should just, maybe that's something we can consider doing, is making an iPhone Pro and then just making iPhone, because that's kind of what the XS and XS Max are. They're like pro devices versus the more basic, like iPhone 8, iPhone 7. So another defense of the system is Apple's ecosystem is unbeatable. But the thing is that to get into this ecosystem, you got to buy $1,000 Mac, you got to buy a $3,000, $2,000, $1,500 MacBook Pro, you got to buy a $500, $400, you can get the $300 iPad. But to get into this ecosystem is a major investment. So if you only have one, this argument doesn't even matter. But I cannot sit up here and lie and act like this hasn't made me more productive. Having an Apple device airdrop between devices have definitely made me more productive, and they all work seamlessly very well. Now they're not perfect. This Mac over here that you see behind me freezes all the time. I have to delete files and refresh it and clean it up. It's a computer just like every other device, but the same can't be said about, you know, like using a Microsoft and an Android device. It just doesn't work as well. And that's just a fact based on my experience. Many people will agree. I think that Google's getting pretty close with the Google and Chromebook. That ecosystem is becoming pretty strong, but at the same time, they still need to work on a Pixel Slate and stuff like that. So this ecosystem here is a very strong thing indeed. But again, you're gonna pay a substantial investment to get into this ecosystem. So it's kind of like bittersweet over here. And in Apple's defense for this last point is that they're the only phone company out there that's not under the grips of Google's software. So Apple is the only company that's running their own software that is in the mainstream besides every other Android phone that does run on Google's OS. I mean, there might be some phones in other countries, but they're not in the media's eyes. So at this current time in the mainstream public right now, it's either Apple or some Android phone from some other manufacturer, leading by Samsung, Huawei, LG. These are the leaders in this segment. So what does Apple need to do to turn this thing around? And my suggestion, in my opinion, this is what I think here needs to be done, is innovate better at the high end, so it will distinguish more between the different iPhones, so US buyers will be excited again, meaning bring out something that makes people want to bite on that product, get that product. Launch a true mid-ranger device, a device between $399 to $449 in the US that can bring it to a price that's more accessible to places like India, for example, which is one of the fastest smartphone growing markets in the world, so they can better compete with these Chinese devices as well as OnePlus. And my last suggestion would be to stop keeping around these super old iPhones like the iPhone 7, for example, and modernize the lineup. If you take a look at Huawei, for example, and the Honor brand, basically everything has a teardrop notch. Everything is looking pretty fresh and modern across the board, to the cheapest to the highest end phones they have. So stop keeping around these older looking designs longer than they need to be around, because honestly, it kind of makes them useless to buy if you know anything about tech, because they're just kind of old at this point and it's moving very fast. So in conclusion, has Apple lost their minds? And I don't think it's so much that they lost their minds, more that it is that they're trying to keep their profits the same, please investors and things like that. But at the same time, they're also pissing off and making a lot of customers mad. But I am optimistic that they will turn this thing around. They got plenty of cash flow to go ahead and turn this thing around if they truly want to. I don't think the current strategy is going to keep working, at least at the consumer level. Professionals, people who like premium pro innovative devices like myself, will probably still buy them. But the customers, the mainstream consumer, the person who's just buying a phone because they want a good smartphone, is not going to continue to pay $1,000 for these devices. It's either get your stuff together and start offering phones that are super innovative, that make people want to pay $1,000 for the Pro line, and bringing a mid-range phone for people who don't want to pay $1,000, not this XR that's $749, almost the price of $1,000 anyway. If you get a 256 gig, it is $1,000. In other countries, it is $1,000. So the final answer is they haven't fully lost their minds, but they're on their way there. So get your mind right. Let's see some improvements. I'm optimistic. And let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think Apple has just lost their minds? You think they've lost their minds? You think they don't care? They're just sipping a pina colada somewhere on a beach and a beautiful island with palm trees and saying, yeah, just keep buying those $1,000 phones? Or do you think they're going back to the drawing boards, thinking about the customer and what they can do to improve things? Let us know down below. So what do you think? Have they lost their minds? Are they just totally out of it right now? Comment your thoughts down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Nick helping you to master your technology. Be sure to be well. I will catch you all in the next episode, and peace.